I'm a little bit sorry I'm a few minutes late, but I had to eat a thing. That thing had to get ate. And you know it. Man's got to eat a thing. I've eaten the thing. And having eaten the thing, I would like to tell you all about... Oh, heck yes, exactly. If I don't survive, there's not going to be any more readings. And, you know, I've got person to please here. Excuse me. I know what side my bread is buttered, I'll tell you what. I want to tell you about Book 3, Chapter... And I'm always calculating these things. I believe this is Chapter 14. Panurge's dream with the interpretation thereof. At 7 o'clock of the... I gotta say, you might be interested to know that when I was looking through the table of contents to queue this up, I found that there was a character introduced in a few chapters called Goat's Nose. And I'm looking forward to that. I really am. Whap. At 7 o'clock of the next following morning, Panurge did not fail to present himself before Pantagruel, in whose chamber were at the time Epistemon, Friar John of the Funnels, Ponocrates, Eudemon, Carpalin, and others, to whom, at the entry of Panurge, Pantagruel said, "Lo, here cometh our dreamer." That word, quoth Epistemon, in ancient times cost very much, and was dearly sold to the children of Jacob. Pardon me. Then said Panurge, I have been plunged into my dumps so deeply, as if I had been lodged with Gaffer Noddycap. Dreamed indeed I have, and that right lustily, but I could take along with me no more thereof than I did goodly understand, save only that I, in my vision, had a pretty, fair, young, gallant, handsome woman, who no less lovingly and kindly treated and entertained me, hugged, cherished, cockered, dandled, and made much of me, as if I had been another neat dilly darling minion, like Adonis. Never was man more glad than was I. Never was man more glad than I was then. My joy at that time was incomparable. She flattered me, tickled me, stroked me, groped me, frizzled me, curled me, kissed me, embraced me, laid her hands about my neck, and now and then made jestingly pretty little horns above my forehead. I told her in the like disport, as I did play the fool with her, that she should rather place and fix them in a little below mine eyes, that I might see the better what I should stick at with them. For, being so situated, Momus then would find no fault therewith, as he did once with the position of the horns of bulls. The wanton toying girl, notwithstanding any remonstrance of mine to the contrary, did always drive and thrust them further in, yet thereby, which to me seemed wonderful, she did not do me any hurt at all. A little after, though I know not how, I thought I was transformed into a tabor, and she into a cho, or maybe that's a chuff. I don't know what either of those are. My sleeping there being interrupted, I awaked in a start, angry, displeased, perplexed, chafing, and very wroth. There have you a large platter full of dreams. Make thereupon good cheer, and, if you please, spare not to interpret them according to the understanding which you may have in them. Come, Carpalin, let us to breakfast. To my sense and meaning, quoth Pantagruel, if I have the skill or knowledge in the art of divination by dreams, your wife will not really, into the outward appearance of the world, plant or set horns and stick them fast in your forehead after a visible manner, as satyrs used to wear and carry them, but she will be so far from preserving herself loyal in the discharge and observance of a conjugal duty, that on the contrary, she will violate her plighted faith, break her marriage oath, infringe all matrimonial ties, prostitute her body to the dalliance of other men, and so make you a cuckold. I do not regret for a microsecond rolling the R on prostitute, and I might do it again, but I probably won't. This point is clearly and manifestly explained and expounded by Artemidorus, just as I have related it. Nor will there be any metamorphosis or transmutation made of you into a drum or tabor, but you will surely be as soundly beaten as ever was tabor at a merry wedding. Nor yet will she be changed into a chaw, but will steal from you, chiefly in the night, as is the nature of that thievish bird. Hereby you may perceive your dreams to be in every jot conform and agreeable to the Virgilian lots. A cuckold you will be, beaten and robbed. Then cried out Father John with a loud voice, He tells the truth, upon my conscience, thou wilt be a cuckold, an honest one, I warrant thee. Oh, the brave horns that will be borne by thee! Ha, ha, ha! Our good Master de Coronibus, God save thee and shield thee. Wilt thou be pleased to preach but 2 words of a sermon to us? And I will go through the parish church to gather up alms for the poor. You are, quoth Panurge, very far mistaken in your interpretation, for the matter is quite contrary to your sense thereof. My dream presageth that I shall by marriage be stored with plenty of all manner of goods, the hornifying of me showing that I will possess a cornucopia, that Almathean horn which is called the horn of abundance, whereof the fruition did still portend the wealth of the enjoyer. You possibly will say that they are rather like to be satyr's horns, for you of these did make some mention. Amen, amen, fiat fiater ad differentiam pape. Thus shall I have my touch her home still ready. Whoa, that's a word for it. My staff of love, sempiternally in a good case, will, satire-like, be never toiled out, a thing which all men wish for, and send up their prayers to that purpose, but such a thing as nevertheless is granted but to a few. Hence doth it follow by a consequence as clear as the sunbeams that I will never be in the danger of being made a cuckold, for the defect hereof is causa sine qua non, yea, the sole cause, as many think, of making husbands cuckolds. What makes poor scoundrel rogues to beg, I pray you? Is it not because they have not enough at home wherewith to fill their bellies and their pokes? What is it that makes the wolves to leave the woods? Is it not the want of flesh meat? Flesh meat. What maketh women whores? You understand me well enough. And herein may I very well submit my opinion to the judgment of learned lawyers, presidents, counselors, advocates, procurers, attorneys, and other glossers and commentators on the venerable rubric, De Frigidis et Maleficietis. Wow, why is this hard? You are, in truth, sir, as it seems to me, excuse my boldness if I have transgressed, in a most palpable and absurd error to attribute my horns to cuckoldry. Diana wears them on her head after the manner of a crescent. Is she a cucquian for that? Oh, I've never seen that word before, and that intrigues me. Cucquian. I'm going to just write that out. How the devil can she be cuckolded who never yet was married? Speak somewhat more correctly, I beseech you, lest she, being offended, furnish you with a pair of horns shaped, by the pattern of those which she made for Actaeon. The goodly Bacchus also carries horns, Pan, Jupiter Ammon, with a great many others. Are they all cuckolds? If Jove be a cuckold, Juno is a whore. This follows by the figure metalepsis. Wow, let me just allow that. You are allowed to say fetish on this channel. That is permitted. Hi, Montrose. This follows by the figure metalepsis, as to call a child in the presence of his father and mother, a bastard, or whore's son, is tacitly an underboard no less than if he had said openly the father is a cuckold and his wife a punk. Well, now I'm interested in his wife. Let our discord come clearer to the purpose. The horns that my wife did make me are horns of abundance, planted and grafted in my head for the increase and shooting up of all good things. This will I affirm for truth, upon my word, and pawn my faith and credit both upon it. As for the rest, I will be no less joyful, frolic, glad, cheerful, merry, jolly, and gamesome than a well-bended tabor in the hands of a good drummer at a nuptial feast, still making a noise, still rolling, still buzzing and cracking. Believe me, sir, in that consisteth none of my least good fortunes, and my wife will be jocund, fit, compt, neat, quaint, dainty, trim, tricked up, brisk, smirk, and smug, even as a pretty little Cornish chow. Who will not believe this? Let hell or the gallows be the burden of his Christmas carol. Yeah. I love the hell out of that. Mantra said another word, and we approve. Good job. Thumbs up. It's remarkable to me, though, that every single mod action has been, apart from jackanapes that need banning, was you saying words which are ostensibly banned. The filter is ridiculous. Anyway. I remark, quoth Pantagruel, the last point or particle which you did speak of, and having seriously conferred it with the first, find that at the beginning you were delighted with the sweetness of your dream, but in the end and final closure of it, you startlingly awaked, and on a sudden were forthwith vexed in choler and annoyed. Yea, quoth Panurge, the reason of that was because I had fasted too long. Flatter not yourself, quoth Pantagruel. All will go to ruin. Know for a certain truth, that every sleep that endeth with a starting, and leaves the person irksome, grieved, and fretting, doth either signify a present evil, or otherwise presageth and portendeth a future imminent mishap. To signify an evil, that is to say, to show some sickness hardly curable, a kind of pestilentious or malignant boil, botch, or sore, lying and lurking hid, occult and latent within the very center of the body, which many times doth by the means of sleep, whose nature is to reinforce and strengthen the faculty and virtue of concoction, being, according to the theorems of physic, to declare itself, and moves forward towards the outward superficies. Just catching up on that. Yeah, I mean, we have to find them, and, you know, as Ms. Goatfish says, I'd rather we start with a blacklist, and then winnow that down as we go along. At this sad stirring is the sleeper's rest, and ease disturbed and broken, whereof the first feeling and stinging smart declare itself, admonisheth that he must patiently endure great pain and trouble, and thereunto provide some remedy, as when we say proverbially, to incense hornets, to move a stinking puddle, and to awake a sleeping lion, instead of those more usual expressions, and of a more familiar and plain meaning, to provoke angry persons, is to make a thing the worse by meddling with it, and to irritate a testy choleric man when he is at quiet. On the other part, to presage or foretell an evil, especially in what concerneth the exploits of the soul in matters of somnial divinations, is as much to say as that it giveth us to understand that some dismal fortune or mischance is destined and prepared for us, which shortly will not fail to come to pass. A clear and evident example hereof is to be found in the dream and dreadful wakening of Hecuba, as likewise in that of Eurydice, the wife of Orpheus, neither of which was no sooner finished, saith Ennius, but that incontinently thereafter they awaked in a start, and were affrighted horribly. Thereupon these accidents ensued. Hecuba had her husband Priamus, together with her children, slain before her eyes, and saw then the destruction of her country. And Eurydice died speedily thereafter in a most miserable manner. Aeneas, dreaming that he spoke to Hector a little after his decease, did on a sudden and in a great start awake, and was afraid. Now hereupon did follow this event. Troy that same night was spoiled, sacked, and burnt. At another time, the same Aeneas, dreaming that he saw his familiar geniuses and peanuts, in a ghastly fright and astonishment awaked, of which terror and amazement the issue was, that the very next day subsequent, by a most horrible tempest on the sea, he was like to have perished and been cast away. Moreover, Turnus, being prompted, instigated, and stirred up by the fantastic vision of an infernal fury to enter into a bloody war against Aeneas, awaked in a start much troubled and disquieted in spirit, in sequel whereof, after many notable and famous routs, defeats, and discomfitures in open field, he came at last to be killed in a single combat by the said Aeneas. 1,000 other instances I could afford, if it were needful, of this matter. Whilst I relate these stories of Aeneas, remark the saying of Fabius Pictor, who faithfully averred that nothing had at any time befallen unto, was done, or enterprised by him, whereof he prealably had not notice, and beforehand foreseen it to the full, by sure predictions, altogether founded on the oracles of somnial divination. To this there is no want of pregnant reasons, no more than of examples. For if repose and rest in sleeping be a special gift in favor of the gods, as is maintained by the philosophers, and by the poet attested in these lines, then sleep, that heavenly gift, came to refresh of human labors the wearied flesh. Such a gift or benefit can never finish or terminate in wrath and indignation without portending some unlucky fate and most disastrous fortune to ensue. Otherwise, it were a molestation, and not an ease, a scourge, and not a gift. At least not proceeding from the gods above, but from the infernal devils our enemies, according to the common vulgar saying. Give me a second. Suppose the lord, father, or master of a family, setting at a very sumptuous dinner, furnished with all manner of good cheer, and having at his entry to the table his appetite sharp set upon his victuals, whereof there was great plenty, should be seen to rise in a start, and on a sudden fling out of his chair, abandoning his meat, frighted, appalled, in a horrid terror, who should not know the cause hereof would wonder, and be astonished exceedingly. But what? He heard his male servants cry, "Fire, fire, fire, fire!" His serving maids and women yell, "Stop thief, stop thief!" And all his children shout as loud as ever they could, "Murder! Oh, murder, murder!" Then was it not high time for him to leave his banqueting, for application of a remedy in haste, and to give speedy order for succoring of his distressed household? Truly, I remember that the Kabbalists and Masoretes, interpreters of the sacred scriptures, entreating how with verity one might judge of the evangelical apparitions, because oftentimes the angel of Satan is disguised and transfigured into an angel of light, said that the difference of these two mainly did consist in this: the favorable and comforting angel useth in his appearing unto man at first to terrify and hugely affright him, but in the end he bringeth consolation, leaveth the person who hath seen him joyful, well pleased, fully content and satisfied. But on the other side, the angel of perdition, that wicked, devilish, and malignant spirit, at his appearance unto any person in the beginning cheereth up the heart of his beholder, but at last forsakes him, and leaves him troubled, angry, and perplexed. Fart poops, poop farts. Anyway, just trying to help out a little bit. I think they're really setting him up here. Like, here's all these things are like, yo, Panurge, this thing you want to do is going to end badly. Here's the 17 million ways in 7 chapters in which I'm detailing how it's going to go bad. I have all manner of various sciences to back this up. It is a fact. It's going to go bad. And Panurge is all like, no, you, basically. Well, more or less. But I think we're going to go somewhere deep here. Book 3, Chapter 15, Panurge's Excuse and Exposition of the Monastic Mystery Concerning Powdered Beef. I'm interested. Powdered beef. I mean, what miracle is this? The Lord save those who see and do not hear, quoth Panurge. I see you well enough, but know not what it is that you have said. Pardon me. The hunger-starved belly wanteth ears. For lack of victuals before God, I roar, bray, yell, and fume, as in a furious madness. I have performed too hard a task today, an extraordinary work indeed. He shall be craftier, and do far greater wonders than ever did Mr. Mush, who shall be able any more this year to bring me on the stage of preparation for a dreaming verdict. Fie! Not to sup at all. That is the devil. Pox take that fashion. Come, Friar John, let us go break our fast. For if I hit on such a round refection in the morning as will serve thoroughly to fill the mill-hopper and hogshead of my stomach, and to furnish it with meat and drink sufficient, then add a pinch, as in the case of some extreme necessity which presseth, I could make a shift that day to forbear dining, but not to sup. A plague wrought that base custom, which is an error offensive to nature. That lady made the day for exercise, to travel, work, wait on, and labor in each his negotiation and employment, and that we may, with the more fervency and ardor, prosecute our business. She sets before us a clear burning candle, to wit, the sun's resplendency, and at night, when she begins to take the light from us, she thereby tacitly implies no less than if she would have spoken thus unto us. My lads and lasses, all of you are good and honest folk. You have wrought well today, toiled and turmoiled enough. The night approacheth. Therefore, cast off these moiling cares of yours. Desist from all of your swinking, painful labors, and set your minds how to refresh your bodies in the renewing of their vigor with good bread, choice wine, and store of wholesome meats. Then may you take some sport and recreation, and after that lie down and rest yourselves, that you may strongly, nimbly, lustily, and with the more alacrity tomorrow attend on your affairs as formerly. I don't know, what if it was nice beef powder? Falconers, in like manner, when they have fed their hawks, will not suffer them to fly on a full gorge, but let them on a perch abide a little, that they may rouse, bait, tower, and soar the better. That good Pope who was at the first institutor of fasting understood this well enough, for he ordained that our fast should reach but to the hour of noon. All the remainder of that day was at our disposure, freely to eat and feed at any time thereof. In ancient times there were but few that dined, as you would say, some churchmen, monks, and canons, for they have little other occupation. Each day is a festival unto them, who diligently heed the claustral proverb, the missa ad mensam. They do not use to linger and defer their sitting down and placing of themselves at table, only so long as they have a mind in waiting for the coming of the abbot, so that they fell to without ceremony terms or conditions, and everybody supped, unless it were some vain, conceited, dreaming dotard. Hence was a supper called coena, which showeth that it is common to all sorts of people. Thou knowest it well, Friar John. Come, let us go, my dear friend. In the name of all the devils of the infernal regions, let us go. The gnawings of my stomach in this rage of hunger are so tearing that they make it bark like a mastiff. Let us throw some bread and beef into his throat to pacify him, as once the Sibyl did to Cerberus. Thou likest best monastical brewis, the prime, the flower of the pot. I am for the solid principal verb that comes after, the good brown loaf, always accompanied with a round slice of the 9-lecture powdered laborer. What the? I read that right, but what did I just read? A round slice of the 9-lecture powdered laborer. Make sure you got that right. Yeah, okay. I know the meaning, answered Friar John. This metaphor is extracted out of the claustral kettle. The laborer is the ox that hath wrought and done the labor, after the fashion of 9 lectures, that is to say, most exquisitely well and thoroughly boiled. These holy religious fathers, by a certain cabalistic institution of the ancients, not written, but carefully by tradition conveyed from hand to hand, rising betimes to go to morning prayers, were wont to flourish that their matutinal devotion with some certain notable preambles before their entry into the church, viz., they dunged in the dungarees, pissed in the pisseries, spit in the spitteries, melodiously coughed in the cougheries, and doted in their doteries, that to the divine service they might not bring anything that was unclean or foul. These things thus done, they very zealously made their repair to the holy chapel, for so was in their canting language termed the convent kitchen, where they with no small earnestness had care that the beef pot should be put on the crook for the breakfast of the religious brothers of our Lord and Savior. Spittery is such a good word. Cofferees, a room for coughing in. You don't, no, Billy, don't cough here. Go to the coffery. And the fire they would kindle under the pot themselves. Now the matins, consisting of 9 lessons, it was incumbent on them that they have risen the rather for the more expedite dispatching of them all. The sooner that they rose, the sharper was their appetite, and the barkings of their stomachs, and the gnawings increased in the like proportions, and they consequently made these goodly men thrice more a-hungered and athirst than when their matins were hemmed over only with 3 lessons. The more betimes they rose, by the said cabal, the sooner was the beef pot put on. The longer that the beef was on the fire, the better it was boiled. The more it was boiled, it was the tenderer. The tenderer that it was, the less it troubled the teeth, delighted more the palate, less charged the stomach, and nourished our good religious men the more substantially, which is the only end and prime intention of the first founders, as appears by this, that they eat not to live, but live to eat, and in this world have nothing but their life. Let us go, Panurge. Now, now I have understood thee, quoth Panurge, my plush cod friar, my caballine and claustral bollock. I freely quit the costs, interest, and charges, seeing you have so egregiously commented upon the most especial chapter of the culinary and monastic cabal. Come along, my carpelin, and you, Friar John, my leather dresser. Good morrow to you all, my good lords. I have dreamed too much to have so little. Let us go. Panurge had no sooner done speaking than Epistemon, with a loud voice, said these words. I don't feel like yelling it, though. It is a very ordinary and common thing amongst men to conceive, foresee, know, and presage the misfortune, bad luck, or disaster of another, but to have the understanding, providence, knowledge, and prediction of a man's own mishap is very scarce and rare to be found anywhere. This is exceeding judiciously and prudently deciphered by Aesop in his Apologues, who there affirmeth that every man in the world carrieth about his neck a wallet, in the forebag whereof were contained the faults and mischances of others, always exposed to his view and knowledge. And in the other script thereof, which hangs behind, are kept the bearer's proper transgressions and inauspicious adventures, at no time seen by him, nor thought upon, unless he be a person that hath a favorable aspect from the heavens. Yeah, that is a remarkably good question that I wish I could answer. It's really not demanding. I'm checking my stats are not dropping. Or my frames, rather, I should say. Hope it resolves. I am also posting these things. I've got a few that I've got to actually put online, but they're uploaded to YouTube. So worst case scenario, if you're really into this, it's still there. Okay. Book 3, Chapter 16. How Pantagruel adviseth Panurge to consult with the Sibyl of Panzoust. Panzoust? I'm going to go with Panzoust anyway. A little... Wow. Look at the size of this paragraph. It's like I'm reading Joseph Conrad in here or something. Oh boy. A little... don't look at the paragraph. Just listen to me pick my way through it very slowly. A little while thereafter... The whole paragraph is a chapter, by the way. A little while thereafter, Pantagruel sent for Panurge, and said unto him, The affection which I bear you, now being inveterate and settled in my mind by a long continuance of time, prompteth me to the serious consideration of your welfare and profit, in order whereto remark what I have thought thereon. It hath been told to me that at Panzoust, near Crully, dwelleth a very famous Sibyl, who is endowed with the skill of foretelling all things to come. Take Epistemon in your company, repair towards her, and hear what she will say unto you. She is possibly, quoth Epistemon, some Canidia, Sagana, or Pythonissa, either whereof with us is vulgarly called a witch. I being the more easily induced to give credit to the truth of this character of her, that the whole place of her abode is vilely stained with the abominable repute of abounding more with sorcerers and witches than ever did the plains of Thessaly, I should not, to my thinking, go thither willingly, for that it seems to me a thing unwarrantable, and altogether forbidden in the law of Moses. We are not Jews, quoth Pantagruel, nor is it a matter judiciously confessed by her, nor authentically proved by others that she is a witch. Pardon me. Let us for the present suspend our judgment, and defer till after your return from thence the sifting and garbling of those niceties. Do you know but that she may be an 11th Sibyl or a 2nd Cassandra? But although she were neither, I've lost my place already, and she did not merit the name or title of any of those renowned prophetesses, what hazard, in the name of God, do you run by offering to talk and confer with her of the instant perplexity and perturbation of your thoughts? Seeing especially, and which is most of all, she is, in the estimation of those who are acquainted with her, held to know more, and to be of a deeper reach of understanding than is either customary to the country wherein she liveth, or to the sex whereof she is. What hindrance, hurt, or harm doth the laudable desire of knowledge bring to any man, were it from a sot, a pot, a fool, a stool, a winter mitten, a truckle for a pulley, the lid of a goldsmith's crucible, an oil bottle, or an old slipper? You may remember to have read, or heard at least, that Alexander the Great, immediately after having obtained a glorious victory over the King Darius and Arbela, refused, in the presence of the splendid and illustrious courtiers that were about him, to give audience to a poor certain despicable like fellow, who through the solicitations and mediations of some of his royal attendants was admitted humbly to beg that grace and favor of him. But sore did he repent, although in vain, 1,000 and 10,000 times thereafter, the surly state which he then took upon him to the denial of so just a suit, the grant whereof would have been worth unto him the value of a brace of potent cities. He was indeed victorious in Persia, but withal so far distant from Macedonia, his hereditary kingdom, that the joy of the one did not expel the extreme grief which, through occasion of the other, he had inwardly conceived, for, not being able with all his power to find or invent a convenient mean and expedient how to get or come by the certainty of any news from thence, both by reason of the huge remoteness of the places from one to another, as also because of the impetitive interposition of many great rivers, the interjacent obstacle of diverse wild deserts, and the obstructive interjection of sundry almost inaccessible mountains. Yikes! Whilst he was in this sad quandary, and solicited pensiveness, which you may suppose could not be of a small vexation to him, considering that it was a matter of no great difficulty to run over his whole native soil, possess his country, seize on his kingdom, install a new king on the throne, and plant thereon foreign colonies, long before he could come to have any advertisement of it, for obviating the jeopardy of so dreadful inconveniency, and putting a fit remedy thereto, a certain Sidonian merchant of a low stature but high fancy, very poor in show, and to the outward appearance of little or no account, having presented himself before him, went about to affirm and declare that he had excogitated and hit upon a ready mean and way by the which those of his territories at home should come to the certain notice of his Indian victories, and himself be perfectly informed of the state and condition of Egypt and Macedonia within less than 5 days. Wow, I'm just... Whereupon the said Alexander, plunged into a sullen animadvertency of the mind, though through his rash opinion of the improbability of performing a so strange and impossible-like undertaking, dismissed the merchant without giving ear to what he had to say, and vilified him. What could it have cost him to hearken unto what the honest fellow had invented and contrived for his good? Well, actually, many people have... Well, ideas are cheap. Sorry. What detriment, annoyance, damage, or loss could he have undergone to listen to the discovery of that secret which the good fellow would have most willingly revealed unto him. Nature, I am persuaded, did not come without a cause frame, did not, wow, what the, nature, I am persuaded, did not without cause, not without a cause, frame our ears open, putting thereto no gate at all, nor shutting them up with any manner of enclosures, as she hath done unto the tongue, the eyes, and other such outjetting parts of the body. The cause, as I imagine, is to the end that every day and every night, and that continually, we may be ready to hear, and by a perpetual hearing apt to learn. For all of our senses, it is the fittest for the reception of the knowledge of arts, sciences, and disciplines, and it may be that man was an angel, that is to say, a messenger sent from God, as Raphael was to Tobit. Too suddenly did he contemn, despise, and misregard him, but too long thereafter, by an untimely and too late repentance, did he do penance for it. You say very well, answered Epistemon, yet shall you never for all that induce me to believe that it can tend any way to the advantage or commodity of a man to take advice and counsel of a woman, namely of such a woman and the woman of such a country. That sounds a little sexist to me, folks. Truly have I found, quoth Panurge, a great deal of good in the counsel of women, chiefly in that of the old wives amongst them, for every time I consult with them I readily get a stool or two extraordinary, to the great solace of my bum-gut passage. Ah, man. They are as sleuth-hounds in the fallibility of their scent, and in their sayings no less sententious than the rubrics of the law. Therefore, in my conceit, it is not an improper kind of speech to call them sage or wise women, in confirmation of which opinion of mine, the customary style of my language alloweth them the denomination of presage women. The epithet of sage is due unto them because they are surpassing dexterous in the knowledge of most things, and I give them the title of presage, for that they divinely foresee and certainly foretell future contingencies and events of things to come. Sometimes I call them not monettes, but monettes, from their wholesome monitions. Whether it be so, ask Pythagoras, Socrates, Empedocles, and our master Ortunius. I furthermore praise and commend above the skies the ancient memorable institution of the pristine Germans, who ordained the responses and documents of old women to be highly extolled, most cordially reverenced, and prized at a rate in nothing inferior to the weight, test, and standard of the sanctuary. Yeah, the sexism is kind of a surprise, isn't it? And as they were respectfully prudent in receiving of these sound advices, so by honoring and following them did they prove nor less fortunate in the happy success of all their endeavors. Witness the old wife Aurinia, and the good mother Veled, in the days of the Vespasian. You need not any way doubt but that the feminine old age is always fructifying in qualities sublime. I would have said Sibylline. Let us go by the help, let us go by the virtue of God, let us go. Farewell, Friar John, I recommend the care of my codpiece to you. Well, quoth Epistemon, I will follow you, with this protestation nevertheless, that if I happen to get a sure information, or otherwise find that she doth use any kind of charm or enchantment in her responses, it may not be imputed to me for a blame to leave you at the gate of her house, without accompanying you any further in. Hey, look, we got a picture of the symbol of Panzust. Book 3, Chapter 17. How Panurge spoke to the Sibyl of Panzust. Their voyage was 3 days' journeying. On the third whereof was shown unto them the house of the vaticinatress, standing on the nap or top of a hill, under a large and spacious walnut tree. Without great difficulty they entered into that straw-thatched cottage, scurvily built, naughtily movable, and all besmoked. It matters not, quoth Epistemon, Heraclitus, the grand scotist and tenebrous darksome philosopher. That sounds like a title I'd given myself when I was 16. was nothing astonished at his introit into such a coarse and paltry habitation, for he did usually show forth unto his sectators and disciples that the gods made as cheerfully their residence in these mean homely mansions as in sumptuous magnific palaces. Pardon me. Replenished with all manner of delight, pomp, and pleasure. I withal do really believe that the dwelling place of the so famous and renowned Hecate was just such another petty cell as is this, when she made a feast therein to the valiant Theseus, and that of no other better structure was the cot or cabin of Hyrieus or an Epion, wherein Jupiter, Neptune, and Mercury were not ashamed, all three together, to harbor and sojourn a whole night, and there to take a full and hearty repast. For the payment of the shot, they thankfully pissed Orion. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure I want to find out. They finding the ancient woman at a corner of her own chimney, Epistemon said, "She is indeed a true Sibyl, and the lively portrait of one represented by the Greek Camenoi of Homer. The old hag was in a pitiful bad plight, and condition and manner of the outward state and complexion of her body, the ragged and tattered equipage of her person in the point of accoutrement, and beggarly poor provision of fare for her diet and entertainment. She was ill apparelled, worse nourishd, toothless, blear-eyed, crook-shouldered, snotty, her nose still dropping, and herself still drooping, faint and pithless, whilst in this woefully wretched case she was making ready for her dinner porridge of wrinkled green coleworts, with a bit skin of yellow bacon, mixed with a twice before cooked sort of waterish unsavory broth, extracted out of bare and hollow bones." Yummy. Let me just pause here. Yep. That's pretty much it. And her place is a dump. Don't forget that part. Epistemon said, "By the cross of a groat, we are to blame, nor shall we get any response at all, for we have not brought along with us the branch of gold." "I have," quoth Panurge, "provided pretty well for that, for here I have it within my bag, in the substance of a gold ring, accompanied with some fair pieces of small money." No sooner were these words spoken, when Panurge, coming up towards her, after the ceremonial performance of a profound and humble salutation, presented her with 6 neats' tongue dried in the smoke, a great butter pot full of fresh cheese, a borachio furnished with good beverage, and a ram's cod stored with single pence newly coined. At last he, with a low courtesy, put on her medical finger a pretty handsome golden ring, whereinto was rightfully artificially enchased a precious toadstone of Bos. This done, in a few words and very succinctly, did he set upon and expose unto her the motive reason of his coming, most civilly and courteously entreating her that she might be pleased to vouchsafe to give him an ample and plenary intelligence concerning the future good luck of his intended marriage. The old trot for a while remained silent, pensive, and grinning like a dog. Then, after she had set her withered breech upon the bottom of a bushel, she took into her hands 3 old spindles, which when she had turned and whirled betwixt her fingers very diversely and after several fashions, she pried more narrowly into, by the trial of their points, the sharpest whereof she retained in her hand, and she threw the other 2 under a stone trough. After this, she took a pair of yarn windles, which she 9 times unintermittedly veered and frisked about. Then at the 9th revolution or turn, without touching them any more, maturely perpending the manner of their motion, she very demurely waited upon their repose and cessation from any further stirring. In sequel whereof, she pulled off one of her wooden pattens, put her apron over her head, as a priest uses to do his amice when he is going to sing mass, and with a kind of antique, gaudy, party-colored string knit it under her neck. Being thus covered and muffled, she whiffed off a lusty good draught out of the borachio, took 3 several pence forth of the ramcod fob, put them into so many walnut shells, which she set down upon the bottom of a feather pot. Then, after she had given them 3 whisks of a broom besom athwart the chimney, casting into the fire half a bavin of long heather, together with a branch of the dry laurel, she observed with a very hush and coy silence in what form they did burn, and saw that, although they were in a flame, they made no kind of noise or crackling din. Hereupon she gave a most hideously and horribly dreadful shout, muttering betwixt her teeth some few barbarous words of a strange termination. This so terrified Panurge that he forthwith said to Epistemon, "The devil mince me into a gallimaufry if I do not tremble for fear. I do not think but that I am now enchanted, for she uttereth not her voice in the terms of any Christian language. Oh, look, I pray you, how she seemeth unto me to be by 3 full spans higher than she was when she began to hood herself with her apron. What meaneth this restless wagging of her slouchy chaps? What could be the signification of the uneven shrugging of her holchy shoulders? To what end doth she quaver with her lips like a monkey in the dismembering of a lobster? That's not something you see every day. What can be the signification of the uneven shrugging of her... Oh, no, I did that one. My ears, through horror glow. Ah, how they tingle! I think I hear the shrieking of Proserpina. The devils are breaking loose to be all here. Oh, the foul, ugly, and deformed beasts! Let us run away! By the hook of God, I am like to die for fear. I do not love the devils. They vex me, and they are unpleasant fellows. Now let us fly, and betake us to our heels. Farewell, Gammer. Thanks and gramercy for your goods. I will not marry. No, believe me, I will not. I will fairly quit my interest therein, and totally abandon and renounce it from this time forward, even as much as present. With this, as he endeavored to make an escape out of the room, the old crone did anticipate his flight and make him stop. He is a girl's blouse. The way how she prevented him was this. Whilst in her hand she held the spindle, she flung out to a backyard close by her lodge, where, after she had peeled off the barks of an old sycamore 3 several times, she very summarily, upon 8 leaves which dropped from thence, wrote with the spindle point some curt and briefly couched verses, which she threw into the air, and said unto them, Search after them if you will, find them if you can, the fatal destinies of your marriage are written in them. No sooner had she done thus speaking than she did withdraw herself into her lurking hole, where on the upper seat of the porch she tucked up her gown, her coats and smock as high as her armpits, and gave them a full inspection of the knock-and-drow, which, being pursued by Panurge, he said to Epistemon, By God's bodikins, I see the Sibyl's hole. She suddenly then bolted the gate behind her, and was never since seen any more. They jointly ran in haste after the fallen and dispersed leaves, and gathered them at last, though not without great labor and toil, for the wind had scattered them amongst the thorn bushes of the valley. When they had ranged them each after the other in their due places, they found out their sentence, as it is metrified in this octastitch. Well, she basically just mooned them. She mooned Panurge. Just like, look at this. And he's like, oh my God, I saw old lady part. And then she took off. I mean, he needs some mooning, don't get me wrong. Let me tell you about the poem. Thy fame upheld, properly as corrected by Ozell, thy fame will be shelled by her, I trow. Even so, and she with child of thee, no. Thy good end, suck she shall, and flay thee, friend, but not all. All right. That's something else. Do you think maybe his marriage is doomed? I mean, like every other bit of prophecy so far? Or is this just foolish talk? Book 3, chapter 18. How Pantagruel and Panurge did diversely expound the verses of the Sibyl of Panzust. The leaves being thus collected and orderly disposed, Epistemon and Panurge returned to Pantagruel's court, partly well pleased and other part discontented, glad for their being come back, and vexed for the trouble they had sustained by the way, which they found to be craggy, rugged, stony, rough, and ill-adjusted. They made an ample and full relation of their voyage unto Pantagruel, as likewise of the estate and condition of the Sibyl. Then, having presented to him the leaves of the sycamore, they show him the short and twaddle verses that were written in them. Pantagruel, having read and considered the whole sum and substance of the matter, fetched from his heart a deep and heavy sigh. Then said to Panurge, You are now, forsooth, in a good taking, and have brought your hogs to a fine market. The prophecy of the Sibyl doth explain and lay out before us the same very predictions which have been noted, foretold, and presaged to us by the decree of the Virgilian lots and the verdict of your own proper dreams, to wit, that you shall be very much disgraced, shamed, and discredited by your wife, for that she will make you a cuckold in prostituting herself to others, being big with child by another than you, will steal from you a great deal of your goods, and will beat you, scratch and bruise you, even to plucking the skin in a part from off you, will leave the print of her blows in some member of your body. You understand as much, answered Panurge, in the veritable interpretation and expounding of recent prophecies as a sow in the matter of spicery. Be not offended, sir, I beseech you, that I speak thus boldly, for I find myself a little in choler, and that not without cause, seeing it is the contrary that is true. Take heed, and give attentive ear unto my words. That old wife said that, as the bean is not seen till first it be unhusked, and that its swadder will be shelled or peeled from off it, so it is that my virtue and transcendent worth will never come by the mouth of fame to be blazed abroad proportionable to the height, extent, and measure of the excellency thereof, until prealably I get a wife and make the full half of a married couple. How many times have I heard you say that the function of a magistrate or office of dignity discovereth the merits, parts, and endowments of the person so advanced and promoted, and what is in him? That is to say, we are then best able to judge aright of the deservings of a man when he is called to the management of affairs, for when he lived in a private condition, we could have no more certain knowledge of him than of a bean within his husk. And thus stands the first article explained. Otherwise, could you imagine that the good fame, repute, and estimation of an honest man should depend upon the tail of a whore? Now to the meaning of the second article. My wife will be with child, and here lies the prime felicity of marriage, but not of me. Cop soddy, that I do believe indeed it will be a pretty little infant. Oh, how heartily I shall love it. I do already dote upon it, for it will be my dainty feedle darling, my genteel dilly minion. From thenceforth, no vexation, care, or grief shall take such deep impression on my heart, how hugely great a vehement soever it otherwise appear, but that it shall vanish forthwith at the sight of that my future babe, and at the hearing of the chat and prating of its childish gibberish. And blessed be the old wife. By my truly, I have a mind to settle some good revenue or pension upon her out of the readiest increase of the lands of my Salmigondinois. Okay, let me try this again. Salmigondinois. Ha-ha! I did it. Not an inconstant or uncertain rent seek, like that of a witless, giddy-headed bachelors, but sure and fixed, in the nature of the well-paid incomes of regenting doctors. If this interpretation doth not please you, think you my wife will bear me in her flanks, conceive with me, and be of me delivered, as women use in childbed to bring forth their young ones, so as that it may be said, Panurge is a second Bacchus, that he hath been twice born, he is reborn, as was Hippolytus, as was Proteus, one time of Thetis, and secondly of the mother of the philosopher Apollonius, as were the two Palici, near the flood Semaethos in Sicily. His wife was big of child with him. In him is renewed and begun again the palintacy of the Megarians and the palagenesy of Democritus. Fie upon such errors! To hear stuff of that nature rends my ears. The words of the third article are, She will suck me at my best end. Why not? That pleaseth me right well. You know the thing. I need not tell you that it is my intercrural pudding with one end. I swear and promise that, in what I can, I will preserve it sappy, full of juice, and as well victualled for her use as may be. She shall not suck me, I believe, in vain, nor be destitute of her allowance. There shall her justum both in peck and lippy be furnished to the full externally. This is the weirdest brag I'm reading right now. Fuck. You may expound this passage allegorically, and interpret it to theft and larceny. I love the exposition, and the allegory pleaseth me, but not according to the sense whereto you stretch it. It may be that the sincerity of the affection which you bear me moveth you to harbour in your breast those refractory thoughts concerning me, with a suspicion of my adversity to come. We have the saying from the learned, that a marvellously fearful thing is love, and that true love is never without fear. But, sir, according to my judgment, you do understand both of and by yourself that here stealth signifieth nothing else, no more than 1,000 other pieces of Greek and Latin, old and modern writings, but the sweet fruits of amorous dalliance, which Venus liketh best when reaped in secret, and culled by fervent lovers filchingly. Why so, I prithee tell? Because when the feat of the loose coat skirmish whoa, that's good. When the feat of the loose coat skirmish happeneth to be done underhand and privily, between two well disposed, athwart the steps of a pair of stairs lurkingly, and in covert behind a suit of hangings, or close hid and trussed upon an unbound faggot, it is more pleasing to the Cyprian goddess, and to me also, I speak this without prejudice, to any better or more sound opinion, than to perform that cull-busting art after the cynic manner, in the view of the clear sunshine, or in a rich tent, under a precious stately canopy, within a glorious or sublime pavilion, or yet on a soft couch between rich curtains of cloth of gold, without affrighted, at long intermediate respites, enjoying the pleasures and delights of a bellyful, at all great ease, with a huge fly-fap fan of crimson satin and a bunch of feathers of some East Indian ostrich, serving to give chase unto the flies all round about, whilst in the interim, the female picks her teeth with a stiff straw, picked even then from out of the bottom of the bed she lies on. A little loose coat skirmish, my dear? Right. If you be not content with this my exposition, are you of the mind that my wife will suck and sup me up as people used to gulp and swallow oysters out of the shell, or as the Sicilian women, according to the testimony of Dioscorides, were wont to do to the grain of alkermes? Assuredly that is an error. Who seetheth on it, doth neither gulch up nor swill down, but takes away what hath been packed up, catcheth, snatcheth, and plies the play of hay pass, repass. The fourth article doth imply that my wife will flay me, but not all. Oh, the fine word! You interpret this to beating strokes and blows. Speak wisely. Will you eat a pudding? Sir, I beseech you to raise up your spirits above the low-sized pitch of earthly thoughts unto that height of sublime contemplation which reacheth to the apprehension of the mysteries and wonders of Dame Nature. And here be pleased to condemn yourself by a renouncing of those errors which you have committed very grossly and somewhat perversely in expounding the prophetic sayings of the Holy Sibyl. Yet put the case, albeit I yield not to it, that by the instigations of the devil my wife should go about to wrong me, make me a cuckold downward to the very breach, disgrace me otherwise, steal my goods from me, yea, and lay violently her hands upon me. She nevertheless should fail of her attempts and not attain to the proposed end of her unreasonable undertakings. The reason which induceth me to here too is grounded totally on this last point, which is extracted from the profoundest privacies of a monastic pantheology, as good Friar Author Wagtail told to me once upon a Monday morning, as we were, if I have not forgot, eating a bushel of trotter pies. Ugh. And I remember it well it rained hard. God give 'em the good morrow. The women at the beginning of the world, or a little after, conspired to flay the men quick, because they found the spirit of mankind inclined to domineer it, and bear rule over them upon the face of the whole earth, and in pursuit of this their resolution, promised, confined, swore, and covenanted amongst them all by the pure faith they owe to the nocturnal Saint Rogero. But oh, the vain enterprises of women! Oh, the great fragility of that sex feminine! They did begin to flay the man, or peel him, as says Catullus, at that member which of all the body they loved best, to wit, the nervous and cavernous cane, and that above 5,000 years ago. Yet have they not of that small part alone flayed any more till this hour but the head. In mere despite whereof the Jews snip off that parcel of skin in circumcision, choosing far rather to be called clip-yards, rascals, than to be flayed by women, as are other nations. My wife, according to this female covenant, will flay it to me, if it be not so already. I heartily grant my consent thereto, but will not give her leave to flay at all. Nay, truly will I not, my noble king. I'm going to let her circumcise me if I haven't already been circumcised. This is what I'm getting out of this. Yea, but, quoth Epistemon, you say nothing of her most dreadful cries and exclamations when she and we both saw the laurel bough burn without yielding any noise or crackling, or how you were complete panty waste. You know it is a very dismal omen, an inauspicious sign, unlucky indice, and token formidable, bad, disastrous, and most unhappy, as is certified by Propertius, Tibullus, and the quick philosopher Porphyrius Eustathius on the Iliads of Homer, and by many others. Verily, verily, quoth Panurge, brave are the allegations which you bring me, and testimonies of two-footed calves. These men were fools, as they were poets and dotards, as they were philosophers, full of folly, as they were of philosophy. I'm getting a whole lot of, one of it was, she's going to be pregnant. And he's like, yeah, because I'm going to make her pregnant. She's going to suck you dry. You mean she's going to suck my knob dry? Am I right, guys? Yeah. She's going to flay you. Yeah, she's going to circumcise me. I mean, it's just constantly stretching. Also, Pantagruel is the best debater of all existence. So betting against him would be a losing cause. Okay, awesome. Goat's Nose is coming up after this chapter. I've been looking. I don't know who Goat's Nose is, but I'm really looking forward to it. Chapter 3, Book 3, Chapter 11. How Pantagruel praiseth the counsel of dumb women. Pantagruel, when this discourse was ended, held for a pretty while his peace, seeming to be exceedingly sad and pensive. Then said to Panurge, the malignant spirit misleads, beguileth, and seduceth you. Wow, I just felt very lispy saying that. Seduceth you. I have read that in times past the surest and most veritable oracles were not those which either were delivered in writing or uttered by the word of mouth in speaking. For many times in their interpretation, right witty, learned, and ingenious men have been deceived through amphibologies, equivoques, and obscurities of words, no less than by the brevity of their sentences. For which cause Apollo, the god of vaticination, was surnamed Loxias. Those which were represented then by signs and outward gestures were accounted the truest and the most infallible. Such was the opinion of Heraclitus, and Jupiter did himself in this manner give forth in Ammon frequently predictions. Nor was he single in this practice, for Apollo did the like amongst the Assyrians. His prophesying thus unto those people moved them to paint him with a large, long beard, and clothes beseeming an old settled person of a most posed, staid, and grave behavior. Not naked, young, and beardless, as he was portrayed most usually amongst the Grecians. Let us make trial of this kind of fastidizency. And go you take advice of some dumb person without any speaking. I am content, quoth Panurge. But, says Pantagruel, it were requisite that the dumb you consult with, it were requisite that the dumb you consult with be such as have been deaf from the hour of their nativity, and consequently dumb. for none can be so lively, natural, and kindly dumb as he who hath never heard. How is it, quoth Panurge, that you conceive this matter, if you apprehend it so, that never any spoke who had never before heard the speech of others? I will from that antecedent bring you to infer very logically a most absurd and paradoxical conclusion. But let it pass. I will not insist on it. You do not then believe what Herodotus wrote of 2 children, who at the special command and appointment of Psammetichus, king of Egypt, having been kept in a petty country cottage, where they were nourished and entertained in a perpetual silence, did at last, after a certain long space of time, pronounce this word bec, which in the Phrygian language signifieth bread. Nothing less, quoth Pantagruel, do I believe then that it is a mere abusing of our understandings to give credit to the words of those who say that there is any such thing as a natural language. All speeches have had their primary origin from the arbitrary institutions, accords, and agreements of nations in their respective condescendments, to which should be noted and betokened by them. An articulate voice, according to the dialecticians, hath naturally no signification at all, for that the sense and meaning thereof did totally depend upon the good will and pleasure of the first deviser and imposer of it. I do not tell you this without a cause, for Bartholus, lib 5 de verbal bleh, did seriously reporteth that even in his time there was in Eugubia one named Sir Nello de Grealis, who, although he by a sad mischance became altogether deaf, understood nevertheless everyone that talked in the Italian dialect, howsoever he expressed himself, and that only by looking on his external gestures, and casting an attentive eye upon the diverse motions of his lips and chaps. I have read, I remember also, in a very literate and eloquent author, that Tiridates, king of Armenia, in the days of Nero, made a voyage to Rome, where he was received with great honor and solemnity, and with all manner of pomp and magnificence. Yea, to the end there might be a sempiternal amity and correspondence preserved betwixt him and the Roman Senate. There was no remarkable thing in the whole city which was not shown unto him. At his departure, the emperor bestowed upon him many ample donatives of an inestimable value, and besides, the more entirely to testify his affection toward him, heartily entreated him to be pleased to make choice of any whatsoever thing in Rome was most agreeable to his fancy, with a promise juramentally confirmed that he should not be refused of his demand. Thereupon, after a suitable return of thanks for a so gracious offer, he required a certain jack-pudding whom he had seen to act his part most egregiously upon the stage, and whose meaning, albeit wow, why was that hard? Albeit he knew not what it was he had spoken, he understood perfectly enough by the signs and gesticulations which he had made. And for this suit of his, in that he asked nothing else, he gave this reason, that in the several wide and spacious dominions which were reduced under the sway and authority of his sovereign government, there were sundry countries and nations much differing from one another in language, language, with whom, whether he was to speak unto them or give any answer to their requests, he was always necessitated to make use of divers sorts of truckmen and interpreters. Now with this man alone, sufficient for supplying all their places, will that great inconveniency hereafter be totally removed, seeing he is such a fine gesticulator, and in the practice of chirology an artist so complete, expert, and dexterous, that with his very fingers he doth speak. Howsoever, you are to pitch upon such a dumb one as is deaf by nature and from his birth, to the end that his gestures and signs may be the most vively and truly prophetic, and not counterfeit by the intermixture of some adulterate lustre and affectation. Yet whether this dumb person shall be of the male or female sex is in your option, lieth at your discretion, and altogether dependeth on your own election. I would more willingly, quoth Panurge, consult with and be advised by a dumb woman, were it not that I am afraid of 2 things, The first is that the greater part of women, whatsoever be that they see, do always represent unto their fancies, think and imagine, that it hath some relation to the sugared entering of the goodly Ithiphalos, and graphing in the cleft of the overturned tree the quick-set imp of the pin of copulation. That's a lot of words for what he's trying to say. Whatever signs, shows, and gestures we shall make, or whatever our behavior, carriage, or demeanor shall happen to be in their view and presence, they will interpret the whole in reference to the act of androgenation and culbutizing exercise, by which means we shall be abusively disappointed of our designs, in regard that she will take all her signs for nothing else but tokens and representations of our desire to entice her unto the lists of a Cyprian combat or Katzenconny skirmish. Do you remember what happened at Rome 260 years after the foundation thereof? A young Roman gentleman encountering by chance at the foot of Mount Celion with a beautiful Latin lady named Verona, from whom her very cradle upwards had always been born both deaf and dumb, very civilly asked her, not without a chironomatic Italianizing of his demand, with a various jectigation of his fingers and other gesticulations as yet customary upon the speakers of that country, what senators in her descent from the top of the hill she had met with going thither. Actually, I think Panurge's theory is that old ladies really like to do it a lot. But, yeah, he's basically saying, Dick! For you are to conceive that he, knowing no more of her deafness than dumbness, was ignorant of both. She, in the meantime, who neither heard nor understood so much as one word of what he had said, straight imagined, by all that she could apprehend in the lovely gesture of his manual signs, that what he then required of her was what herself had a great mind to, even that which a young man doth naturally desire of a woman. Then was it by signs, which in all occurrences of venereal love are incomparably more attractive, valid, and efficacious than words, she beckoned to him to come along with her to her house, which, when he had done, she drew him aside to a privy room, and then made a most lively alluring sign unto him to show that the game did please her. Whereupon, without any more advertisement, or so much as the uttering of one word on either side, they fell to and brigardized it lustily. Brigardized it. There, brigardized it. Ah! I'm just proud of myself for a minute. Well, I have read some of the most incomprehensible gibberish, and I keep tripping over this stuff. The other cause of my being averse from consulting with dumb women is, that to our signs they would make no answer at all, but suddenly fall backwards in a divarication posture, to intimate thereby unto us the reality of their consent to the supposed motion of our tacit demands. Or, if they should chance to make any countersigns responsory to our proposition, they would prove so foolish, impertinent, and ridiculous that by themselves should easily judge their thoughts to have no excursion beyond the Duffling Academy. I wish I could teach at Duffling Academy. Well, yeah, I mean, you woke up to Panurge going, I can't talk to a deaf profiteeress because all she wants to do is bang. So, get some sleep. I'll send you the YouTube links later, and we'll catch you later, right? If you want, then you can hear it then. I've got a whack of them online. I mean, they're not awesome, but, Anyways, Duffling Academy. Okay. You know very well how at Brignolle, when the religious nun, Sister Fatbum, was made big with child by the young Stiffly Stand Toot, her pregnancy came to be known, and she cited by the abbess, and in a full convention of the convent, accused of incest. Her excuse was that she did not consent thereto, but that it was done by the violence and impetuous force of the friar Stiffly Stand Toot. Hereto the abbess very austerely replying, Thou naughty wicked girl, why didst thou not cry, A rape! A rape! Then should all of us have run to thy succor. Her answer was that the rape was committed in the door to her, where she durst not cry because it was a place of sempiternal silence. But, quoth the abbess, thou roguish wench, why didst thou not make some sign to those that were in the next chamber beside thee? To this she answered, that with her buttocks she made a sign unto them as vigorously as she could, yet never one of them did so much as offer to come to her help and assistance. But, quoth the abbess, thou scurvy baggage, why didst thou not tell it to me immediately after the perpetration of the fact, that we might orderly, regularly, and canonically have accused him? I would have done so, had the case been mine, for the clearer manifestation of mine innocency. I truly, madam, would have done the like with all my heart and soul, quoth Sister Fatbum, but that fearing I should remain in sin, and in the hazard of eternal damnation, if prevented by a sudden death, I did confess myself to the Father Friar before he went out of the room, who, for my penance, enjoined me not to tell it, or reveal the matter unto any. It were a most enormous and horrid offense, detestable before God and the angels, to reveal a confession. Such an abominable wickedness would have possibly brought down fire from heavens, wherewith to have burnt the whole nunnery, and sent us all headlong to the bottomless pit, to bear company with Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. You will not, quoth Pantagruel, with all your jesting, make me laugh. I know that all the monks, friars, and nuns had a rather violate and infringe the highest of the commandments of God than break the least of their provincial statutes. Take you, therefore, Goat's Nose, a man very fit for your present purpose, for he is, and hath been, both dumb and deaf from the remotest infancy of his childhood. But he is a terrible man. All right. Book 3, Chapter 20. How Goat's Nose by signs maketh answer to Panurge. I don't remember, Panurge is very good at signing, so this should go quite well. Goat's Nose being sent for, came the day thereafter to Pantagruel's court. At his arrival, to which Panurge gave him a fat calf, the half of a hog, 2 puncheons of wine, 1 load of corn, and 30 francs of small money. Then, having brought him before Pantagruel, in presence of the gentleman of the bedchamber, he made this sign unto him. He yawned a long time, and in yawning made without his mouth, with the thumb of his right hand, the figure of the Greek letter tau, by frequent reiterations. Afterwards, he lifted up his eyes to the heavenwards, then turned them in his head like a she-goat in the painful fit of an absolute birth, in doing whereof he did cough and sigh exceedingly heavily. This done, after he made demonstration of the want of his codpiece, he from under his shirt took his placket-racket in a full grip, making it therewithal clack very melodiously betwixt his thighs. Then no sooner had he with his body stooped a little forwards, and bowed his left knee, but that immediately thereupon, holding both his arms on his breast, in a loose, faint-like posture, the one over the other, he paused a while. Goat's Nose looked very wistfully upon him, and having heedfully enough viewed him all over, he lifted up into the air his left hand, the whole fingers whereof he retained fistwise close together, except the thumb and forefinger, whose nails he softly joined and coupled to one another. I understand, quoth Pantagruel, what he meaneth by that sign. It denotes marriage, and withal the number 30, according to the profession of the Pythagoreans. You will be married. Thanks to you, quoth Panurge, in turning himself towards Goat Nose, my little sewer, pretty master's mate, dainty bailey, curious sergeant marshal, and jolly catch-pole leader. Then did he lift higher up than before his said left hand, stretching out all the 5 fingers thereof, and severing them as widely from one another as he possibly could get done. Here, says Pantagruel, doth he more amply and fully insinuate unto us, by the token which he showeth forth of the quinary number, that you shall be married. Yea, that you shall not only be affianced, betrothed, wedded, and married, but you shall furthermore cohabit and live jollily and merrily with your wife. For Pythagoras called 5 the nuptial number. which, together with marriage, signifies the consummation of matrimony. Because it is composed of a ternary, the first of the odd and binary, the first of the even numbers, as of a male and female knit and united together. No, I think he kind of did a slip-slap with his wing-wang, by the way. Although I much prefer your interpretation of it. In very deed, it was the fashion of old in the city of Rome at marriage festivals to light 5 wax tapers, nor was it permitted to kindle any more at the magnificent nuptials of the most potent and wealthy, nor yet any fewer at the penurious weddings of the poorest and most abject of the world. Moreover, in times past, the heathen or paynims implored the assistance of 5 deities, or of one helpful at least, in 5 several good offices to those that were to be married. Of this sort were the nuptial Jove, Juno, president of the feast, the fair Venus, Pytho, the goddess of eloquence and persuasion, and Diana, whose aid and succor was required to the labor of childbearing. Then shouted Panurge, "Oh, the gentle goat's nose! I will give him a farm near Sine, and a windmill hard by Rabelais." Hereupon the dumb fellow sneezeth with an impetuous vehemency, and a huge concussion of the spirits of the whole body, withdrawing himself in so doing with a jerking turn toward the left hand. "By the body of a fox new slain," quoth Pantagruel, "what is that? This maketh nothing for your advantage, for he betoketh thereby that your marriage will be inauspicious and unfortunate. This sneezing, according to the doctrine of Terpsion, is the Socratic demon. If done toward the right side, it imports and portendeth that boldly and with all assurance one may go whither he will, and do what he listeth, according to what deliberation he shall be pleased to have thereupon taken. His entries in the beginning, progress in his proceedings, and success in the events and issues will be all lucky, good, and happy. The quite contrary thereto is thereby implied and presaged if it be done toward the left. You, quoth Panurge, do always take the matter at the worst, and continually, like another Davus, casteth in new disturbances and obstructions, nor ever yet did I know this old paltry Terpsion worthy of citation, but in points only of cozenage and imposture. Nevertheless, quoth Pantagruel, Cicero hath written I know not what to the same purpose in his 2nd book of divination. Yeah, this is some, like, Rabelais Got Talent type action here. Panurge then, turning himself towards Goat's Nose, made this sign unto him. He inverted his eyelids upward, wrenched his jaws from the right to the left, and drew forth his tongue half out of his mouth. This done, he posited his left hand wholly open, the middle finger wholly accepted, which was perpendicularly placed upon the palm itself, and set it just in the room where his codpiece had been. Then did he keep his right hand altogether shut up in a fist, save only the thumb, which he straight torn backward directly under his right armpit, and settled it afterward on that most eminent part of the buttocks which the Arabs call the al-katim. That means nothing to me. Suddenly thereafter, he made this interchange. He held his right hand after the manner of the left, and posited it on the place where his codpiece sometime was, and retaining his left hand in the form and fashion of the right, he placed it upon his al-katim. This altering of hands did he reiterate 9 several times, at the last whereof he reseated his eyelids in their own first natural position. Then doing the like also with his jaws and tongue, he did cast a squinting look upon Goat's Nose, diddering and shivering his chaps, as apes used to do nowadays, and rabbits, whilst, almost starved with hunger, they are eating oats in the sheaf. And yeah, then was it that Goat's Nose, lifting up into the air his right hand, wholly open and displayed, put the thumb thereof, even close unto its first articulation, between the 2 third joints of the middle and ring fingers, pressing about the said thumb thereof very hard with them both, and whilst the remnant joints were contracted and shrunk in towards the wrist, he stretched forth with as much straightness as he could the fore and middle fingers. That hand thus framed and disposed of, he laid and deposited it upon Panurge's navel, moving withal continually the aforesaid thumb, and bearing up, supporting and or underpropping that hand upon the above specified fore and little fingers, from whence he made it to ascend to the breast, even upward to Panurge's neck, still gaining ground, till having reached his chin, he had put within the concave of his mouth his aforementioned thumb. Then, fiercely brandishing the whole hand, which he made to rub and grate against his nose, he heaved it further up, and made the fashion as if with the thumb thereof he would have put out his eyes. With this Panurge grew a little angry, and went about to withdraw and rid himself from this ruggedly untoward dumb devil. But Goat's Nose, in the meantime, prosecuting the intended purpose of his prognosticatory response, touched very rudely, with the above-mentioned shaking thumb, now his eyes, then his forehead, and after that the borders and corners of his cap. At last Panurge cried out, saying, "Before God, master fool, if you do not let me alone, or that you will presume to vex me any more, you shall receive from the best hand I have a mask wherewith to cover your rascally scoundrel face, you paltry shitten varlet." Then, said Friar John, "He is deaf, and doth not understand what thou sayest unto him." Bully Balak, make sign to him of a fale of histocuffs upon the muzzle. "What the devil," quoth Panurge, "means this busy, restless fellow? What is it that this polyprogmanetic Ardelian to all the fiends of hell doth aim at? He hath almost thrust out mine eyes, as if he had been to poach them in a skillet with butter and eggs. By God, da jurandi, I will feast you with flirts and raps upon the snout, interlarded with a double row of bobs and finger fillipings." Then did he leave him in giving way. I'm sorry, the sentence kills me before I can get to it. Then did he leave him in giving him by way of a salvo of a volley of farts for his farewell. Well, 90%. Goat's Nose, perceiving Panurge thus to slip away from him, got before him, and by mere strength enforcing him to stand, made this sign unto him. He let fall his right arm toward his knee in the same side as low as he could, and raising all the fingers of that hand into a close fist, passed his dexter thumb between the foremost and mid fingers thereunto belonging. Then scrubbing and swinging a little with his left hand, alongst and upon the uppermost in the very bow of the elbow of the said dexter arm, the whole cubit thereof, by leisure, fair and softly, at these thumpatory warnings, did raise and elevate itself even to the elbow, and above it. On a sudden did he then let it fall down as low as before, and after that, at certain intervals, and at such spaces of time, raising and abasing it, he made a show thereof to Panurge. This so incensed Panurge that he forthwith lifted his hand to have stricken him the dumb roister, and given him a sound whereat on the ear, but that the respect and reverence which he carried to the presence of Pantagruel restrained his choler and kept his fury within bounds and limits. Then, said Pantagruel, if the bare signs now vex and trouble you, how much more grievously will you be perplexed and disquieted with the real things which by then are represented and signified. All truths agree and are consonant with one another. This dumb fellow prophesieth and foretelleth that you will be married, cuckolded, beaten, and robbed. As for the marriage, quoth Panurge, I yield thereto and acknowledge the verity of that point of his prediction. As for the rest, I utterly abjure and deny it. And believe, sir, I beseech you, if it may please you to do so, that in the matter of wives and horses, never any man was predestined to a better fortune than I. Are we still doing prophecies? I guess so. Book 3, Chapter 21. How Panurge consulteth with an old French poet named Ramina Groby. I never thought, said Pantagruel, to have encountered with any man so headstrong in his apprehensions, or in his opinions so wilful, as I have found you to be, and see you are. Nevertheless, the better to clear and extricate your doubts, let us try all courses, and leave no stone unturned, nor wind unsailed by. Take good heed to what I am to say unto you. The swans, which are fowls consecrated to Apollo, never chant but in the hour of their approaching death, especially in the Meander flood, which is a river that runneth along some of the territories of Phrygia. This I say, because Alianus and Alexander Myndius write that they had seen several swans in other places die, but never heard any of them sing or chant before their death. However, it passeth for current that the imminent death of a swan is presaged by his foregoing song, and that no swan dieth until prealably he hath sung. After the same manner, poets, who are under the protection of Apollo, when they are drawing near the latter end, do ordinarily become prophets, and by the inspiration of that god swing sweetly in vaticinating things which are to come. It hath been likewise told me frequently that old decrepit men upon the brinks of Charon's banks do usher their decease with a disclosure all at ease, to those that are desirous of such informations, of the determinate and assured truth of future accidents and contingencies. I totally agree with that assessment, Montrose. And unfortunately also Panurge. I remember also that Aristophanes, in a certain comedy of his, calleth the old folks' Sibyls Aetho Geron Zabulia, for as when, being upon a tier by the shore, we see afar off mariners, seafaring men, and other travellers amongst the curled waves of the azure Thetis within their ships. We then consider them in silence only, and seldom proceed any further than to wish them a happy and prosperous arrival. But when they do approach near to the haven, and come to wet their keels within their harbour, then both with words and gestures we salute them, and heartily congratulate their access safe to the port wherein we are ourselves. Just so the angels, heroes, and good demons, according to the doctrine of the Platonics, when they see mortals drawing near unto the harbour of the grave, as the most sure and calmest port of any, full of repose, ease, rest, tranquillity, free from the troubles and solicitudes of this tumultuous and tempestuous world, then is it that they with alacrity hail and salute them, cherish and comfort them, and speaking to them lovingly, begin even then to bless them with illuminations, and to communicate unto them the abstrusest mysteries of divination. I will not offer here to confound your memory by quoting antique examples of Isaac, of Jacob, of Patroclus towards Hector, of Hector towards Achilles, of Polymnestor towards Agamemnon, of Hecuba, of the Rhodian renowned by Posidonius, of Calenus the Indian towards Alexander the Great, of Orodes towards Smezentius, and of many others. It shall suffice for the present that I commemorate unto you the learned and valiant knight and cavalier William of Belay, late Lord of Longueuil, who died on the hill of Tarara in the 10th of January in the climacteric year of his age, and of our supposition 1543, according to the Roman account. The last 3 or 4 hours of his life he did employ in the serious utterance of a very pithy discourse, whilst with a clear judgment and spirit void of all trouble he did foretell several important things, whereof a great deal is come to pass, and the rest we wait for. Howbeit, his prophecies did at that time seem to us somewhat strange, absurd, and unlikely, because there did not then appear any sight of efficacy enough to engage our faith to the belief of what he did prognosticate. Blah. We have here, near to the town of Villemer, a man that is both old and a poet, to wit, Ramina Groby, who to his second wife espoused my lady Broadsow, and whom he begot the fair Basoche. It hath been told me he is a-dying, and so near unto his latter end, that he is almost upon the very last moment, point and article thereof. Repair thither as fast as you can, and be ready to give an attentive ear to what he shall chant unto you. It may be that you shall obtain from him what you desire, and that Apollo will be pleased by his means to clear your scruples. I am content, quoth Panurge. Let us go thither, Epistemon, and that both instantly and in all haste, lest otherwise his death prevent our coming. Wilt thou come along with us, Friar John? Yes, that I will, quoth Friar John, right heartily to do thee a courtesy, my belly ballocks, for I love thee with the best of my Milton liver. Thereupon, incontinently, without any further lingering, to the way they all three went, and quickly thereafter, for they made good speed, arriving at the poetical habitation, they found the jolly old man, albeit in the agony of his departure from this world, looking cheerfully, with an open countenance, splendid aspect, and behaviour full of alacrity. After that Panurge had very civilly saluted him, he in a free gift did present him with a gold ring, which he even then put upon the medical finger of his left hand, in the collet or bezel whereof was enchased an oriental sapphire, very fair and large. Then, in imitation of Socrates, did he make an oblation unto him of a fair white cock, which was no sooner set upon the tester of his bed than that, with a high raised head and crest, lustily shaking his feather coat, he crowed stentorphonically loud. I'm actually amazed I got that word right on the first try. This done, Panurge very courteously required of him that he would vouchsafe to favour him with the grant and report of his sense and judgment touching the future destiny of his intended marriage. For answer hereto, when the honest old man had forthwith commanded pen, paper, and ink to be brought to him, and that he was at the same call conveniently served with all three, he wrote the following verses. Take or not take her, off or on. Handy-dandy is your lot. When her name you write, you blot. 'Tis undone, and when all is done, ended ere it was begun. Hardly gallop if you trot, set not forward when you run, nor be single, though alone, take or not take her. Before you eat, begin to fast, for what shall be was never past. Say, unsay, gainsay, save your breath, then wish at once her life and death, take or not take her. These lines he gave out of his own hands unto them, saying unto them, Go, my lads, in peace. The great God of the highest heavens be your guardian and preserver, and do not offer any more to trouble or disquiet me, with this or any other business whatsoever. I have this same very day, which is the last both of May and of me, with a great deal of labour, toil, and difficulty, chased out of my house a rabble of filthy, unclean, and plaguily pestilentious rake hells, black beasts, dusk dun, white, ash-coloured, speckled, and a foul vermin of other hues, whose obtrusive opportunity would not permit me to die at my own ease, for by fraudulent and deceitful pricklings, ravenous, harpy-like graspings, waspish stingings, and such like unwelcome approaches, forged in the shop of I know not what kind of insatiabilities, they went about to withdraw and call me out to those sweet thoughts wherein I was already beginning to repose myself, and acquiesce in the contemplation and vision, yea, almost in the very touch and taste of the happiness and felicity which the good God hath prepared for his faithful saints and elected the other life and state of immortality. And I don't know how he said that in one breath, because I certainly didn't. Turn out of their courses and eschew them. Step forth of their ways and do not resemble them. Meanwhile, let me be no more troubled by you, but leave me now in silence, I beseech you. Get the hell out of here, punk. I'm not sure if he's complaining that he had a problem with mice or he had a problem with other people. Chapter 3, Book 3, Chapter 22. How Panurge patrocinates and defendeth the order of begging friars. Panurge, at his issuing forth of Raminagrabi's chamber, said as if he had been horribly affrighted, By the virtue of God, I believe that he is an heretic. The devil take me if I do not. He doth so villainously rail at the mendicant friars and Jacobins, who are the two hemispheres of the Christian world, by whose gyronomic circumbilvaginations, wow, as by two celivagist fellow pendulums, all the autonomic metagrobolism of the Romish Church, when tottering and emblusticated with the gibble-gabble gibberish of this odious error and heresy, is homocentrically poised. I have never read such an overwritten sentence in my life. But what harm, in the devil's name, have these two devils of the Capuchins and Minims done unto him? Are not these beggarly devils sufficiently wretched already? Who can imagine that these poor snakes, the very extracts of Ethiophagy, are not thoroughly enough besmoked and besmeared with misery, distress, and calamity? Dost thou think, Friar John, by thy faith, that he is in the state of salvation? He goeth before God as surely damned to 30,000 basketfuls of devils as a pruning bill to the lopping of a vine branch, to revile with opprobrious speeches the good and courageous props and pillars of the church. Is that to be called a poetical fury? I cannot rest satisfied with him. He sinneth grossly and blasphemeth. I just said that right. It doesn't feel right, but it is blasphemeth. It just feels so lispy. Against the true religion. I am very much offended at his scandalizing words and contumelious obloquy. I do not care a straw, quoth Friar John, for what he hath said, for although everybody should twit and jerk them, it were but a just retaliation, seeing all persons are served by them with the like sauce. Therefore do I pretend no interest therein. Let us see, nevertheless, what he hath written. I suppose you might be right. Blah, 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 blah. Panurge very attentively read the paper which the old man had penned, and said to his two fellow travellers, The poor drinker doteth. Howsoever I excuse him, for that I believe he is now drawing near to the end and final closure of his life. Let us go make his epitaph. By the answers which he hath given us, I am not, I protest, one jot wiser than I was. Hearken here, Epestemon, my little bully. Dost not thou hold him to be very resolute in his responsory verdicts? He is a witty, quick, and subtle sophister. I will lay an even wager that he is a miscreant apostate. By the belly of a stalled ox, how careful he is not to be mistaken in his words. He answered by the disjunctives, therefore can it not be true which he saith? For the verity of such lined proponents is inherent only in one of its two members. Oh, the cozening prattler that he is! I wonder if Santiago of Brasseur be one of those cogging shirks. Such was of old, quoth Epistemon, that the custom of the grand vaticinator and prophet Tiresias, who used always, by the way of a preface, to say openly and plainly at the beginning of his divinations and predictions, that what he was to tell would either come to pass or not. And such is truly the style of all prudently presaging prognosticators. He was nevertheless, quoth Panurge, so unfortunately misadventurous in the lot of his own destiny, that Juno thrust out both his eyes. Yes, answered Epistemon, and that is merely out of a spite and spleen for having pronounced his award more veritable than she, upon the question which was merrily proposed by Jupiter. But, quoth Panurge, what archdevil is it that hath possessed this master Remino Groby, that so unreasonably, and without any occasion, he should have so snappishly and bitterly inveighed against these poor honest fathers, Jacobins, minors, and minims? It vexeth me grievously, I assure you, nor am I able to conceal my indignation. He hath transgressed most enormously. His soul goeth infallibly to 30,000 panniers full of devils. I understand you. I understand you not, quoth Epistemon, and it disliketh me very much that you so absurdly and perversely interpret that of the friar mendicants, which by this harmless poet was spoken of black beasts, dun, and other sorts of colored animals. He is not, in my opinion, guilty of such a sophistical and fantastic allegory as by that phrase of his to have meant the begging brothers. He in downright terms speaketh absolutely and properly of fleas, punies, handworms, flies, gnats, and other such scurvy vermin, whereof some are black, some dun, some ash-colored, some tawny, and some brown and dusky, all noisome, molesting, tyrannous, cumbersome, and unpleasant creatures, not only to sick and diseased folk, but to those who are of a sound, vigorous, and healthful temperament and constitution. It is not unlikely that he may have the ascarids and the lumbricks and worms within the entrails of his body. Possibly he doth suffer, as is frequent and usual amongst the Egyptians, together with all those who inhabit the Erythraean confines, and dwell along the shores and coasts of the Red Sea, some sour prickings and smart stingings in his arms and legs of those little speckled dragons, which the Arabians call Meden. True enough. You are to blame for offering to expound his words otherwise, and wrong the ingenious poet, and outrageously abuse and miscall the said freighters by an imputation of baseness undeservedly laid to their charge. We still should, in such like discourses of fatiloquent soothsayers, interpret all things to the best. Will you teach me, quoth Panurge, how to discern flies among milk, or show your father the way how to beget children? He is, by the virtue of God, an arrant heretic, a resolute formal heretic. I say, a rooted combustible heretic, one as fit to burn as the little wooden clock at Rochelle. His soul goeth to 30,000 cartfuls of devils. Would you know whither? Cock's body, my friend, straight under Proserpina's close stool, to the very middle of the self-same infernal pan within which she, by an excrementious evacuation, voideth the fecal stuff of her stinking clysters, and that just upon the left side of the great cauldron of 3 fathom height, hard by the claws and talons of Lucifer, in the very darkest of the passage which leadeth towards the black chamber of Demogorgon. Oh, the villain! Wow, that's... How are we doing here? Okay, there's time for at least one more here. Chapter 23. How Panurge maketh the motion of a return to Remino Grobi. These dudes do have issues. Let us return, quoth Panurge, not ceasing to the uttermost of our abilities to ply him with wholeful admonitions for the furtherance of his salvation. Let us go back, for God's sake. Let us go, in the name of God. Yes, I know. I've been keeping track of the time. It will be a very meritorious work, and of great charity in us to deal so in the matter, and provide so well for him that, albeit he come to lose both body and life, he may at least escape the risk and danger of the eternal damnation of his soul. We will, by our holy persuasions, bring him to a sense and feeling of his escapes, induce him to acknowledge his faults, move him... Excuse me. Wow. Move him to a cordial repentance of his errors, and stir up in him such a sincere contrition of heart for his offenses, as will prompt him with all earnestness, I'm starting to lose it here, to cry mercy, and to beg pardon at the hands of the good fathers. I have plenty of water, thank you. As well of the absent as of such as are present. Whereupon we will take instrument formally and authentically extended, to the end he be not, after his decease, declared an heretic, and condemned, as were the hobgoblins of the provost's wife of Orleans, to the undergoing of such punishments, pains, and tortures as are due to and inflicted on those that inhabit the horrid cells of the infernal regions, and withal incline, instigate, and persuade him to bequeath and leave in legacy, by means of an amends and satisfactions to the outrages and injury done to those good religious fathers throughout all the convents, cloisters, and monasteries of the province, many bribes, a good deal of mass singing, store of obits, and that sempiternally on the anniversary day of his decease, every one of them shall be furnished with a quintuple allowance, and that the great Borachio replenished with the best liquor trudge apace along the tables, as well of the young duckling monkitos, lay brothers, and lowermost degree of the abbey lubbards, as of the learned priests and reverend clerks, the very meanest of the novices and miscients unto the order being equally admitted to the benefit of those funerary and obsequial festivals with the aged rectors and professed fathers. This is the surest ordinary means whereby from God he may obtain forgiveness. Ho, ho! I am quite mistaken. I digress from the purpose, and fly out of my discourse, as if my spirits were a wool-gathering. The devil take me if I go thither. Virtue, God! The chamber is already full of devils. Oh, what a swinging, thwacking noise is now amongst them! Oh, the terrible coil that they keep! Hearken, do you not hear the rustling, thumping bustle of their strokes and blows, as they scuffle with one another, like true devils indeed? Who shall gulp up the remino grobi soul, and be the first bringer of it, whilst it is hot, to Monsieur Lucifer? Beware, and get you hence. For my part, I will not go thither. The devil roast me if I go. Who knows but that these hungry, mad devils may, in the haste of their rage and fury of their impatience, take a quid for a quo, and instead of Ramina Grobi, switch up the poor Panurge frank and free? This man is a shitlord coward. Though formerly, when I was deep in debt, they always failed. Get you thence. I will not go thither. Before God, the very bare apprehension thereof is like to kill me, to be in a place where they are greedy, famished, and hunger-starved devils, amongst factious devils, amidst trading and trafficking devils. Oh, the Lord preserve me! Get you hence! I dare pawn my credit on it, that no Jacobin, Cordelier, Carmelite, Capuchin, Theatin, or Minim will bestow any personal presents at his interment. The wiser they, because he hath ordained nothing for them in his latter will and testament. Pardon me. The devil take me if I go thither. If he be damned, to his own loss and hindrance be it. What the deuce moved him to be so snappish and depravedly bent against the good fathers of the true religion? Why did he cast them off, reject them, and drive them quite out of his chamber, even in that very nick of time, when he stood in the greatest need of the aid, suffrage, and assistance of their devout prayers and holy admonitions? Why did not he by testaments leave them, at least, some jolly lumps and cantles of substantial meat, a parcel of cheek-puffing victuals, and a little belly timber and provision for the guts of these poor folk, who have nothing but their life in this world? Good Lord, when does this stop? Let him go thither who will. The devil take me if I go. For if I should, the devil would not fail to snatch me up. Cancro! Ho, the pox! Get you hence, Friar John. Art thou content that 30,000 wain-load of devils should get away with thee at this very same instant? If thou be, at my request do these 3 things. First, give me thy purse, for besides that thy money is marked with crosses, and the cross is an enemy to charms. The same may befall to thee, which not long ago happened to John Dodin, collector of the excise at Coudray, at the ford of Vide, when the soldiers broke the planks. This moneyed fellow, meeting at the very brink of the bank of the ford with Friar Adam Crankcod, a Franciscan observatin of Mirbo, promised him a new frock, provided that in the transporting of him over the water he would bear him upon his neck and shoulders, after the manner of carrying dead goats. For he was a lusty, strong-limbed, sturdy rogue. The condition being agreed upon, Friar Crankcod trusseth himself up to his very bollocks, and layeth upon his back, like a fair little Saint Christopher, the load of the said supplicant Dodin, and they carried him gaily and with a good will, as Aeneas bore his father Anchises through the conflagration of Troy, singing in the meanwhile a pretty Ave Mary Stella. When they were in the very deepest place of all the ford, a little above the mast wheel of the water mill, he asked if they had any coin about him. Yes, quoth Daudet, a whole bagful, and that he needed not to mistrust his ability in the performance of the promise which he had made unto him concerning a new frock. How? quoth Friar Crankcod, thou knowest well enough that by the express rules, canons, and injunctions of our order, we are forbidden to carry on us any kind of money. Thou art truly unhappy, for having made me in this point to commit a heinous trespass. Why didst thou not leave thy purse with the miller? Without fail, thou shalt presently receive thy reward for it, and if ever hereafter I may but lay hold upon thee within the limits of our chancel at Mirbeau, thou shalt have the miserere, even to the vitulos. With this, suddenly discharging himself of his own burden, he throws me down your Daudet headlong. Take example by this Daudet, my dear friend Friar John, to the end that the devils may the better carry thee away at thine own ease. Give me thy purse. Carry no manner of cross upon thee. Therein lieth an evident and manifestly apparent danger. For if you have any silver coined with a cross upon it, they will cast thee down headlong upon some rocks, as the eagles used to do with the tortoises for the breaking of their shells, as the bald pate of the poet Aeschylus can sufficiently bear witness. Such a fall would hurt thee very sore, my sweet bully, and I would be very sorry for it. No, he would just be sorry. I would be sorry for it. Or otherwise, they will let thee fall and tumble down into the high swollen waves of some capacious sea. I know not where, but I warrant thee, far enough hence as Icarus fell, from which thy name would afterwards get the denomination of the Fenellian Sea. Secondly, be out of debt, for the devils carry a great liking to those that are out of debt. I have sore felt the experience thereof in mine own particular, for now the lecherous varlets are always wooing me, courting me, and making much of me, which they never did when I was all to pieces. The soul of one in debt is insipid, dry, and heretical altogether. Thirdly, with the cowl and domino de Groby, return to Remino Groby, and in case, being thus qualified, 30,000 boatfuls of devils forthwith come not to carry thee quite away. I shall be content to be at the charge of paying for the pint and faggot. Now, if for the more security thou wouldst some associate to bear thee company, let not me be the comrade thou searchest for. Think not to get a fellow traveller of me. Nay, do not. I advise thee for the best. Get you hence. I will not go thither. The devil take me if I go. Notwithstanding all the fright that you are in, quoth Friar John, I would not care so much as might possibly be expected I should, if I once had but my sword in my hand. Thou hast verily hit the nail on the head, quoth Panurge, and speakest like a learned doctor, subtle and well skilled in the arts of devilry. Have a good night. At the time when I was a student in the University of Toulouse, at the same reverend father in the devil, Picatrix, rector of the diabological faculty, was wont to tell us that the devils did naturally fear the bright glancing of swords as much as the splendor and light of the sun. In confirmation of the verity whereof he related this story, that Hercules, at his descent into hell, all the devils of those regions, did not by half so much terrify them with his club and lion's skin, as afterwards Aeneas did with his clear shining armor upon him, and his sword in his hand well furbished and unrusted, by the aid, counsel, and assistance of the Sibylla Cumana. That was perhaps the reason why the Signor John Giacomo di Trevuccio, whilst he was dying at Chartres, called for his cutlass, and died with a drawn sword in his hand, laying about him alongst and athwart around the bed and everywhere within reach, like a stout, doughty, valorous, and knight-like cavalier, by which resolute manner of fence he scared away and put to flight all the devils that were then lying in wait for his soul at the passage of his death. When the Masoretes and Kabbalists are asked why it is that none of all the devils do at any time enter into the terrestrial paradise, their answer hath been, is, and will be still, that there is a cherubim standing at the gate thereof with a flame-like glistening sword in his hand. Although, to speak in the true diabological sense or phrase of Toledo, I needs must confess and acknowledge that, veritably, the devils cannot be killed or die by the stroke of a sword. I do nevertheless avow and maintain, according to the doctrine of said diabology, that there may suffer a solution of continuity, as if with thy shable thou shouldst cut athwart the flame of a burning flame, or the gross opacious exhalations of a thick and obscure smoke, and cry out like very devils at their sense and feeling of this dissolution, which in real deed I must aver and affirm is devilishly painful, smarting, and dolorous. When thou seest the impetuous shock of two armies, and vehement violence of the push in their horrid encounter with one another, dost thou think, Balakaso, that so horrible a noise as is heard there proceedeth from the voice and shouts of men? I'm so losing the whole thread of this, by the way. The dashing and jolting of harness, the clattering and clashing of armies, the hacking and slashing of battle axes, the justling and crashing of pikes, the bustling and breaking of lances, the clamor and shrieks of the wounded, the sound and din of drums, the clangor and shrillness of trumpets, the neighing and rushing in of horses, with the fearful claps and thundering of all sorts of guns, from the double cannon to the pocket pistol inclusively. I cannot goodly deny but that in these various things which I have rehearsed, there may be somewhat occasionative of the huge yell and tintamarre of the two engaged bodies. But the most fearful and tumultuous coil and stir, the terriblest and most boisterous garboil and hurry, the chiefest rustling black saintus of all, and the most principal hurly-burly springeth from the grievously clangorous howling and lowing of devils, who pell-mell, in a hand-over-head confusion, waiting for the poor souls of the maimed and hurt soldiery, receive unawares some strokes with swords, and so by those means suffer a solution of and division in the continuity of their aerial and invisible substances. As if some lackey, snatching at the lard slices stuck in a piece of roast meat on the spit, should get from Mr. Greasy Fist a good rap on the knuckles with a cudgel. They cry out and shout like devils, even as Mars did when he was hurt by Diomedes at the siege of Troy, who, as Homer testifieth of him, did then raise his voice more horrifically loud and sonoriferously high than 10,000 men together would have been able to do. What maketh all this for our present purpose? I have been speaking here of a well-furbished armor and bright shining swords. But so it is not. Friar John, with thy weapon, for by a long discontinuance of work, cessation from labor, desisting from making it officiate, and putting it into practice wherein it has been formerly accustomed, and, in a word, for want of occupation, it is, upon my faith, become more rusty than the keyhole of an old powdering tub. Therefore, it is expedient that you do one of these two things, either furbish your weapon bravely, and as it ought to be, or otherwise have a care that, in the rusty case it is in, you do not presume to return to the house of Ramino Grobi. For my part, I vow I will not go thither. The devil take me if I go. Wow. That was a journey, and I don't know where it took us. But that's where we're going to leave off. I have quite had my fill of this fellow. And so bid you all good night for the time being, and I'm probably going to do some more, what's his name? Gosh, Death Stranding in a little while. And as Ms. Goatfish would say, good night, world.